grew up in the country, not too far from here, and it was a country, but there was still stuff all around, houses and buildings and other things like that. And so whenever life would get chaotic, whenever things would get hard, whenever things would become confusing, I had to get away, and I had to go somewhere that was simpler, somewhere that was more to the heart of life. And I would go into the woods, someplace kind of like this, and I would get back to the root of just being alive, just breathing. And it was great, and I still do that. I still do that today when things are crazy and chaotic and hurtful. I go to the woods, and so when I would go, I would come across places, places where people have had campfires and the ground is scorched. Or this one time I remember going, and there had been this huge fire in the woods, and it wasn't quite a wildfire yet, but it was big enough that it had burnt away a huge swatch of the trees. And I remember thinking back then, I said, wow, fire is pretty crazy. Fire is this, the Greek says, the gift from the gods. Prometheus would give it to us, and it would change our lives. And that's kind of what fire is. We cook our food with it. We are warmed by it. It back in the caveman days, it scared off the saber-toothed tigers. We would wave it in front of them, and we would be safe. It was something that kept us safe and whole and sustained us. But fire is also this dangerous thing. It can burn down a house. It can ravage a forest like this. It can hurt you if you're not careful with it. And sometimes, man, I think that fire is like the church. I mean, there's a reason why, when you hear about the Holy Spirit talking about fire and tongues of flames, and that reason is because just like fire in those woods that I used to get away to when I was younger, fire can be a source of comfort, and it can also be this dangerous thing. And church is the same way. The church can be something that sustains us and leads us to God and connects us with who we are and this deeper sense of living. But if we don't get it right, if it's not pure, if it gets out of hand, it can burn us. It can hurt us. It can make us start to say, I don't want anything to do with this whole faith thing, this whole religion thing, this whole God thing. And I think that's happened. I think, I didn't grow up in church at all. I didn't want anything to do with churches because every church that I knew of were full of people that acted horribly to me and to other people who were desperate for something, desperate for answers, desperate for different life, desperate for a connection with something that's deeper and greater and bigger than themselves. And you go to this place that's supposed to have answers, and you find nothing but just fire, and not the good kind. So after considering all these things, after considering what church could be and what should be and what church isn't for a lot of people, and after talking about all the stuff that gets in the way, that can, sometimes it's the building, sometimes it's the program, sometimes it's the worship style, sometimes it's just people not being their true selves. We sat down with a bunch of friends, and we said, what if it was different? What if we could take away all of that stuff that would get in the way of just connecting to God and worshiping in a meaningful way, and we kind of started over, very simply, and we said, well, what's the easiest way to do that? And he said, well, everybody eats dinner. So what if we sat around a table, and what if we had worship that way at a local restaurant, at a pizza place, for instance? And that's what we did. We found this place, Dante's Pizza in Colonial Heights, And we said, what if worship happened there? What if it happened in the real world? What if it happened in a place that people might not expect it to happen? Isn't that how God works? Isn't that how faith works? That God and worship and this experience of awe and connectedness to the spiritual life happens in the places that you least expected. And so we said, let's do that. Let's get together and do it. And so on Monday nights at 7 o'clock, that's what we're going to do. And what our hope is, what our desire is, what we think that God is wanting out of all of this, is that we come together simply, authentically, being our real selves, sitting around a table and having some real conversation as a part of worship. And that maybe that this little spark, this little spark that is this true church experience becomes something much bigger. And it's not the kind of fire that burns you, but it's the kind of fire that sustains you and impassions you and makes you want to connect more to this idea of God in and amongst us in our lives. And so that's what we're going to do. And so it is our hope that it will start small, just like any fire does, with a small spark or a small light. And that it'll grow. And that it'll grow bigger. And the experience will continue. And that before you know it, all of this religion, all of these experiences that people are having, all of a sudden it becomes uncontrollable. And it becomes the church all over again. So join us. Just give it a shot, and let's see where the fire takes us. And we're going to start with a really, really easy one. And this is a part of worship because fellowship and getting to know each other is a part of worshiping God. And so your first table talk question is there in your menu, and it says, what's your name and what do you do? Well, now you can tell people what you do for a living, or you can tell people something interesting that you do that they might not know.